Michigan went into Assembly Hall and laid an 80-62 whooping on the Indiana Hoosiers behind 25 points, 9 boards, and 4 assists from the big fella Hunter Dickinson. I got to ask you, man, is Michigan back?
I'm pumping the brakes. I'm not quite ready to say that they're back, but this was really, really promising, right? I think we've talked about this a few times, and I've written about it over at Sports Illustrated. Like, the biggest problem for me with Michigan all year is that what made them special last year was they had all these guys who could shoot, dribble, and pass and handle the ball and play in ball screens surrounding Hunter. And I think the biggest reason Hunter Dickinson has struggled this season relative to expectation is that the talent around him has not been as good, particularly spacing the floor. And I think it's just made life really difficult for him on the block. And today you saw some things that were really positive. They shot the ball better as a team. Obviously, Hunter comes out and hits 3 threes. That's a huge lift, but they shoot 11 for 17 as a team from 3. Caleb Houston plays one of the best games he's played in college. And they play with tremendous amount of confidence on the road. I think they kind of felt like they had nothing to lose, and catch Indiana sleeping after a huge home win earlier in the week against Purdue. Like I said, I'm not ready to say they're back because I still think there are some kind of structural flaws here with the lack of, playmakers on the floor and how disappointing Devontae Jones has been. But Jones managed the game better today than he has, I think, in a long time. And you get to feel good when Hunter Dickinson is playing as well as he did today.
I disagree. I'm gonna pump the brakes, but I think they'll be better than they've been. They won't get to last year's status. They'll be better than they were, But again, when you're playing younger guys, they don't have the experience that they had. They don't have the shooting ability they had last year, and they're young. And you replace guys, and that's something I think Juwan, as great as he is as a coach, the adjustments he's going to make is how does he want to build his team? I mean, he's built it with point guard play with the transfer portal, but when you start bringing in these guys and they're young, these freshmen, you got to live with their ups and downs, and everybody's going to go through that. And Caleb, Caleb came out tonight. Caleb Houston was great tonight, but he's been inconsistent. And if you're going to rely on Hunter and Caleb making freaking they made 8 threes tonight, like that, I'm not buying that. Those guys shoot like 30% from 3. So they played great. They were like 16 to 24 combined. It was a great offensive game. Do I see that happening? Not at that rate. They, when you're dealing with the younger guys, they're going to be up and down. And Hunter needs spacing. And now teams are sitting in his lap. They're digging. He doesn't get as much space. They're not shooting the 3 as well. So we're not mentioning him. We don't talk about him much as being one of the better bigs because his sophomore campaign is just not as good, or it's just not as good as he was like a year ago. And it's not his fault. But again, those guys are the team isn't as talented as it once was. They're just younger.
Yeah. So much of the success of being a big guy in college basketball depends on what is around you, right? Like Kofi is going to be a monster at all times because there's a bunch of guys that shoot 42% from 3 around him. And he has Andre Kubela, who is in theory is going to be great in ball screens. If you look at Oscar Tshiebwe and what's going on with him, when you have guys like Kellen Grady and Ty Washington with the way that he's playing, when you have guys that can pull that defense out and give them space, that's when the big guys become effective. And I think we're seeing it a little bit more. Like if Caleb Houston starts making these shots, I think that does change things a little bit, but it's not going to change the fact that Devontae Jones and Eli Brooks, like that's just such a big step down from the playmaking that they had last year. So I think you guys are right. Michigan's never going to be the top 10 team we thought they were in the preseason, but I'm buying them as a tournament team, and this is why. Tell me what you think about this. So this was the first game that they won since when they beat Maryland on Tuesday. It was the first game that they won in a month. The last game that they had won was December 18th. They had gone through their COVID pause. They had a couple rough games when they came back from that. They had that weird thing where we thought Hunter Dickinson was coming back, and then he wasn't coming back, and they missed a couple games, and they missed some time, and then he didn't play against Illinois. So you had that going on. So it took them a little while to get back into that rhythm. And I think we're starting to see what they can be now in these last 2 games. I mean, look, if you're going to blow the doors off Maryland, you're going to blow the doors off Indiana in the same building where Indiana just beat Purdue, Sweeney, I think that says something.
I mean, it's huge, right? And I always believe that they would start to figure things out, right? Because they're too talented not to, because I'm still a huge believer in Juwan Howard as a coach. And I think, he's the type of guy that his teams are never going to quit on him, right? I think it would be very easy for a team with the expectation, and we're going to talk about Memphis and a team, we could argue, has Memphis quit on Penny Hardaway? I think there was never a chance that Michigan's guys were going to quit on Juwan Howard just because of the respect that they have for him, because of the right relationships he builds. And I thought that it was a matter of time before they start to play better. And, today, I think it's just big for their confidence because it's their best win of the season by a significant margin. It's a needle moving win from a resume standpoint. You get a quadrant one game, a game against a team that's probably in the top half of the Big Ten, potentially the top 5 in Indiana. It changes things a little bit. And look, their schedule is a little bit more manageable coming up. They have Northwestern at home this week. They have Nebraska at home next week. They have Penn State at home the week after. Penn State on the road. But if there's a way to get back into the mix, there's a way to start climbing the ladders to make sure you're an NCAA tournament team, to make sure that you're.
Hold on, real quick. I like how you just skipped over the fact that they play at Michigan State and
I was getting ready to say there's some other games in there, right?
Yeah, there's some other games. You're picking and choosing off that schedule,
right? But in the Big Ten, you can go through Northwestern has a 5-game stretch they're finishing out right now where they play 5 in a row of Michigan State, Wisconsin, Purdue, Michigan, and Illinois. Michigan is not staring down a stretch like that right now. And so to have 2 wins in their pocket back-to-back going into a stretch where they're getting some more manageable games and then some house money games, right? Go on the road to Mackey, go on the road to Michigan State, where if you play really well like you did today, maybe you have a chance to win. I think that's huge for your confidence. I think they're trending in the right direction right now to get back to mix. Look, I don't think they're a top 25 team, even when they play, good basketball. I just don't think that's how they're built. But I think they have enough to be a top half Big Ten team if things break right here in the next couple of weeks.
Listen, I believe in Juwan. I think he'll get this thing going, but they're too far behind now. To say they're a tournament team, who do we believe they're going to be ahead of? Are they going to be ahead of Michigan State, Wisconsin? Tell me when to stop. Illinois, Ohio State, Purdue.
Well, here's my thing. There's 7 teams I think that are going to be above them in the Big Ten right now. When you all the way down to Indiana, I think there's 7 teams above them. And then after that, I think that if you win a couple games, let's say that they pick off one of these 2 games at Michigan State or at Purdue, and then they win all the games they're supposed to win the rest of the season. You're going to have enough good wins on there when you include the win at Indiana and win at, let's just say that they win on Saturday at Michigan State, right? You put those together with whatever the metrics look like and the number, probably about 5 quad 1 wins, just winning the games you're supposed to win in the Big Ten. That might be enough to get you in the tournament this year. Win the ACC, like we talked about ad nauseum. How many good teams are in that league, right? How many good teams are in the Pac-12 outside of the top 3? Someone's got to get the bids. Someone's got to get these bids. It's called the Field of 68 for a reason. You got to put 68 teams in the tournament, okay?
They're 9-7 right now, and we just talked about. They got a few games, right? We're going to give them a couple of games, but they got some tough ones. They're going to have to beat some of these top teams in order for us to say to even begin to talk about tournament play for them, and they're just not there yet. They got to go on a run. You're not going to play 500. They're 9-7 right now, and that's a great win. They're 9-7, so they can't be like Sweeney here, just pick the games they want to play and then come back and try to decide, we're going to skip the Michigan State and all those games. We're just going, they got to win a couple of more of those games and maybe get the, 14-8, and then we can start talking about tournament. Right now, they just dug themselves in a hole early on. COVID, other reasons, whatever it is, they just dug themselves in a hole.
Well, Randolph, let me flip it and ask you about Indiana. How do you go from beating the number 4 team in the country, your arch rival at home, storming the floor, having Rob Finney carried off on the shoulders of the fans, to getting run out of the gym by Michigan? How does that happen?
I don't know if they partied until, they just turned it up, and then they just forgot that they just thought they had a cakewalk coming in, and we was going to walk away with this one. That's the only thing I can think of. They look like a completely different team. They're inconsistent shooting though, right? They're not a great 3-point shooting team, and with Xavier Johnson, I thought he played okay. He's up and down perimeter shooting. I just don't think they're strong enough perimeter shooting, surrounding Jackson Davis. And I don't know. The only thing I can think of is this: they just partied and they came in thinking that, hey, Michigan sucks and we're gonna get this dub and keep it moving. I don't have an explanation for it. I mean, down the roster, I don't know. Half the guys didn't even show up. They didn't even bother to come in and play the game. Like I don't even have an explanation for it. It was
here. I think I have one. It might be a hot take, Sweeney, but I think that seeing Xavier Johnson and Rob Finney go off like that against Purdue says a lot more about what Purdue's defensive backcourt is than anything about Indiana.
That's a fair take. Purdue has not guarded the ball particularly well this season. I will say this. Indiana has been good this season when they've come out and guarded. I mean, that's not unique, but like they have the potential to be really elite on defense because of what Trace does at the rim. Xavier and Rob Finney are both really good point of attack guys. Like they can be really good on that on the floor. And I think it's really challenging after a big win like they had to come back and like get. I think they walked in feeling like they're a team that could score 80 points, right? That they're a team that's elite offensively. And they're not, right? I think it's easy to get a big head after a game like that. I think they didn't come out and guard today like a team that had a sense of urgency the way they did against Purdue, the way they have when they've played well so far this season. So, I think you're absolutely right, Rob, that a lot of it is that Purdue is not a very good defensive team, and they were able to exploit that despite Trace Jackson Davis having one of the worst games of his college career, or one of the least impactful games of his college career. He was really on the floor. But I think also, they lost who they were today and what they've been to be where where they were in the Big Ten coming into today, was a team that was willing to really get down and guard you and then play through Trace. And today they didn't get down and guard.
I mean, but look at Finney. I mean, he had 20 points, against Purdue and looked great. And he had what, 2? He had 2 points today. And I'll give Xavier Johnson credit. I mean, having played against him pretty much every year in his college career, he's a blur. Like he can move with the best of them. Now he can't. His jump shots inconsistent, but him getting in the paint, creating, and if he's making threes, he's a tough handle for anybody. Like I give him that. But they just can't have the flip flopping. You can't give me 2 one game and 20 the next, and then sit there and be and expect to win like that. I don't. Anybody can do it. Give me 10 and 10. At least I know what I'm getting. But you can't give me 20 and then come back and give me 2.
Yep. I think the way that our friends over at 3-Man Weave, who host the Field of 68's Best Bet show, will call this a letdown spot, which is where you're coming off those big wins, riding that high. You went out and, probably hit Kilroy's a little bit for people in Bloomington. They know that. But, yeah, I think that's probably what happened.